Welcome back, Jim Campbell. Jim's a Maryville native and Oak Ridge resident for over 30 years, president of the East Tennessee Economic Council, and a fellow at the Howard Baker Jr. Center in Public Policy at the University of Tennessee. I'm going to skip a lot of this because we want to save your time for, but you know, the important parts are you're married to Priscilla Campbell, recently retired from ORA, has 3 daughters, Elise, a mechanical engineer working in Annapolis, Maryland, Amelia, an engineer, and Claire, a grad student in soil science at the University of Wisconsin. And he's going to talk about ETech and give us an update. And if you would just hook that on, and the audio will be better if you do. Okay. And let's see if I can pull it. There we go.
How do the slides
I'm going to move it.
You gonna do it or?
Yeah. Anyhow.
I'm gonna share a happy dollar as well. My eldest daughter, Elise, and her husband, Mike, had our first grandbaby a week ago today, or a week ago Monday. She's 7 pounds, 19 inches. She weighed less when we saw her, because anyway, darling little baby. Mary Grace Aragonis is her name, and they're now in Collierville, Tennessee, where she and her husband work with FedEx. So, good thing. The other thing I want to do before we get started is talk about Tracy Boatner, who's here today. I am actually retiring from ETech in less than 4 weeks, Tracy, right? And Tracy is going to be taking over as president of ETech beginning on April 1st of this year. And I'm really proud of her. She's been working with us now for 6 years, 7. Who's counting? And that's going to let me go do some of the things that I promised some folks I would do a long time ago. When Gene Joyce died, I guess that was around 2000, something in that time frame. Tom Hill and I and Jesse Noritaki and a few others went into his basement and gathered up all his papers, and Gene's all of his life's work, including work he did on the Atomic Communities Act of 1955 and some other things that he did. It was all sitting in a hidden drawer at the University of Tennessee archives, and very few people know they're even there. And it's time to tell the story of the creation of the city of Oak Ridge. And one of the things I'm going to be starting, I actually started 20 years ago working on some of this stuff. But now that I'm going to be retired, I'm going to spend a little more time kind of looking at Gene's stuff, looking at some of the stuff Howard Baker Sr., who was the congressman for Oak Ridge when it was formed in the 1940s. So I've got plenty of things to do. Tracy's going to take over and do the things that ETech does, and we'll go. For those of you who don't know what ETech is, it's a unique Oak Ridge thing. Even across the DOE complex, there's nothing else like the East Tennessee Economic Council. It was actually created in 1974 when the Atomic Energy Agency went out of business and became the Energy Research and Development Organization. And everybody was scared to death in Oak Ridge about what that meant to the work that we do in this community. Is Y-12 going to stay alive? Is the lab going to continue to do this kind of research? Where are we in the enrichment business? All those different questions that came up. And a group called the Rowan Anderson Economic Council formed at that time to do 2 things. One was federal economic development, if you will. To recruit new federal missions to East Tennessee, and 2, to use those missions to create wealth in East Tennessee. And we're gonna talk a little bit about some of that today. Back in the 90s, after I joined ETech in 1995, we decided we needed to count stuff because we really didn't know what success looked like. And so we wanted to look at what is the economic impact of the Department of Energy on the state of Tennessee. And we formed a partnership with DOE and with UT economist Matt Murray. And we started looking at those numbers, and we've been doing an annual, well, not an annual report, but every 4 or 5 years, we update those numbers. And we've done that since 1998. The last one was published last year, and I want to run through those numbers with you this morning. And I apologize, Jim, because I did this for the Roane County Industrial Board a few months ago, and you've heard all this. Some of our other members have heard this too. Tony, could you hit the next slide? So Howard Baker Sr. Is one of my favorite old school congressmen from right up the road here. Wrote a speech in 1959 at the dedication ceremony for what is now the Oak Ridge Municipal Building. Ellen, he never gave this speech, but it's a great speech. It's 9 pages long, and it talks about his vision for the future of Oak Ridge and what he thought was going to come. And I love this quote and some of the others that are part of that talk. Tony? So the numbers here are from 2020, and the period of time we look at was fiscal year 2010. And the bottom line number for this year was $7.2 billion impact across the state of Tennessee. 5 years ago, when we did this same study, that number was $5.6 billion. 25% growth roughly over the last 5 years in the federal presence in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. A remarkable, staggering kind of growth that is happening right now. 4.2 billion of that is to the state GDP, GNP. 2.9 of that goes to personal wealth. Tony? And if anybody has any questions during this, just interrupt me. Jobs, and these numbers are all wrong now because over the last year, there's been about 1,000 new hires in Oak Ridge, and more are coming. It is every day. It seems like there are new people, but in 2000, 14.7 direct hires, and a multiplier on that of 1.9 gives us a sum of 42,000 jobs roughly for this impact. We doing okay, Tony? Yeah. Is that any better? All right. Yeah. One of the things I've always been interested in, and you look at, is what kinds of people actually work in Oak Ridge on the federal sites. And we looked at degrees, 1,800 PhDs out of that 14,600 people. That's actually a smaller number than people thought it was going to be. They thought it would be a higher number, and there actually is an effort going on, particularly at Oak Ridge National Lab right now, to increase the number of PhDs in the community. The number of master's degrees also grew pretty significantly between 2016 and 2000. Most of those are working at the Y12 complex, which I thought was interesting because they've really stepped up their game in project management and some of their engineering skills there. And then 6,700 are bachelor's degrees. So out of the whole range of the 14,000 people that work at the lab, almost all of them have advanced degrees. And the ones that don't, the union and trades employees, one would say those have the equivalence of advanced degrees because of the skill sets they're bringing to their jobs. So a very educated workforce. I know, Pat, that's something you think about a lot, but this is a high-end workforce by any definition. Next one, Tony. Everybody wants to know how much money gets spent by the lab into goods and services. About $1 billion in 2000 was spent in the state of Tennessee procuring things. That is everything from plants and garden supplies, Tom, that you used to sell, to engineering expertise and specialized consultants for certain tasks. We have a list of actually what everybody bought, and in the full report that we give, we share that list so that people can see, what people are buying out there. Number one thing that they bought was consulting services, professional services, engineering talent, legal, and et cetera, was the number one thing. Tony? This number is actually a number I don't much like because it's a good number for this year. 4.2 million was given to charitable causes, but that number is down from preceding years, down significantly. And it's part of a trend, I think, not just in Oak Ridge, but across the nation, where charitable giving is not something that people do as much as they used to. Emily, I was glad to see you pushing people for money this morning, because I think the next generation isn't as generous as our generation has been in giving to causes. But interesting number, and it's an interesting trend. It's something we talk about with the CEOs of the different companies, because being good corporate partners is really important for a community. And I'd like to get that number a little higher in the future. Tony? Yeah. So the cleanup program in Oak Ridge spends about right around $700 million annually to get properties ready for new uses. Oak Ridge's cleanup has been more successful than anywhere else in the DOE complex because it is motivated by cleaning up buildings to put those properties back into new uses. And I don't think you see that at Hanford or Savannah River or some of the other DOE communities out there. There was just a celebration last week of the reuses for the K-25 site. And Jim Rushton's good friends at Kairos Power have bought over 200 acres out there. Another company called Ultrasafe Nuclear Corporation is 3D printing micro reactors and micro reactor fuels at the K-25 site right now. We've got other possibilities coming into play over the next periods of time on that. Go back. Yeah. So what you're seeing here are some of the infrastructure programs that are in place for the next generation of science and security tools. I believe on the top left, Jim, that's your building, is it not? That's the Roan Industrial Board's new training facility that you see constructed out on the west end of Oak Ridge. That's going to be completed.
My birthday, November 26th.
Sure, it's going good. And it's interesting. There's two buildings going to be out there. Jim's building one of them, and the federal government's building the second one. Jim's building is almost done. The federal government hadn't started theirs yet, so I won't go into too much detail on that. But that's good. The bottom right picture is the location of the new supercomputer. That's Frontier. That's about to open up at the National Laboratory. There's going to be a new target station at SNS. That's going to be begin construction in a couple years. And there's a major upgrade going to be happening at the high flux isotope reactor so that the tools of the future for Oak Ridge projects are really getting built right now. Okay, Tony. A lot of, I don't know if you've had the Oak Ridge Innovation Group over here yet, but these group of young people that are starting companies that are actually working for a 3-year period at Oak Ridge National Lab alongside scientists and engineers using the tools that the laboratory has. This is now the 4th cohort, I believe, that they've gone through, usually about 8 in each cohort. The pandemic has slowed things down a little bit as far as their access and all that. But these are great young people that are trying something that's really hard, which is start a new company. And they're beginning to have success. We've been working with Sky Nano, which is a young lady from Vanderbilt University who came here to do a startup a few years ago. We've now recruited her to be on the board of the Oak Ridge and the AMSI Museum. And she's a great addition to the board, thinking entrepreneurially about how that museum can interact better with an audience in a pandemic world. So really creative people in the innovative crossroads people. Tony? Yeah. And Ray's online, so you can't not talk about the history and what can be done to improve the telling of the story of Oak Ridge. Oak Ridge is a place where people come. They come to do science. They come to do national security work. A lot of them come for 2 or 3 years on a project and then go away. We've got to have places here in town where people can meet, where people can convene, where young people can stay and build a family if they want to stay and build a family. But the history stories, particularly at K-25, I will tell you, I'm the chairman of the board of AMSI right now. We also operate the K-25 History Museum, and anybody that hasn't been out there should go immediately. It's a great little museum. It tells an awesome story about what happened at the K-25 site. We're going to be doing some things to enhance that story. There's a portal here. Who worked at K-25 here? Somebody. So portal 4 out there. We're going to turn that into an entryway into the new K-25. We're going to put some food trucks out there during the day for the new employees that work out there. We're going to put electric golf carts out there so that if you want to tool around the historic site that the National Park will be operating at the old K-25 site, we'll have some things there. We're trying to make it more user-friendly out there. And it's kind of an interesting opportunity because there's space out there and there's actually things to do. Ellen, we still don't have a meeting space in the city of Oak Ridge, despite the fact that you have the money to do it and you don't seem to have the will to do it. But we need a place for meetings in the city of Oak Ridge. About the Civic Center, which suck. I'll just, okay. Anyway. Yeah, anyway, we need a meeting space. Our organization had to go to the Blount County to do our annual meeting this year because there's no meeting spaces in Oak Ridge that can do that. And there is money available for meeting spaces in Oak Ridge. There just seems to be.
Where is the money coming?
The money has been appropriated from the state of Tennessee. It was done that 3 years ago. Been sitting in a bucket for 3 years. And you need a place to put 400 people, 400 to 500 people together. And the only space that's available of that size right now is at Y12, and because of security reasons, they've had to lock it up. So anyway, that's really what I have. I will tell you that in the next 10 years, you will see probably in the neighborhood of $10 billion in capital projects that happen on the Oak Ridge Reservation and on the TVA property in Oak Ridge. The small Kairos Power is doing a $100 million project at ETDP. TVA is going to build an SMR on the Clinch River site. There'll be a new lithium production facility at the Y12 plant. There'll be a target station for the SNS. There'll be an isotope production facility at ORNL. There's an idea about creating a fusion energy village at ORNL, which I think has a lot of real traction. And we've already got General Fusion out of Vancouver, Canada, has set their American headquarters in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, to start that process. The potential for growth and new opportunities at ORNL and Y12 over the next decade is enormous. And we haven't even talked about the electrification of the auto and what that's going to do potentially to East Tennessee with the resources that we have here. So with that, I'm going to shut up and ask for questions. Yes, sir. Yes, they do. And we didn't break them out in there, but they're in there. Yeah. Yeah. Emily. Yeah. So airport is, I don't know the specifics of that because there's a NEPA program going on right now and the transfer is all going on. When we work with radioisotope companies in particular, and Koki has already bought some land out at ETTP that they might use to make Molly 99. We're working with another one out of East Lansing, Michigan, that's looking at another kind of isotope they want to produce. Bill Gates's company TerraPower is making some things with actinium out at the lab. Having an airport to do those kind of businesses where time is money, literally, is important. And the isotope industry is one I think can grow here in East Tennessee a good bit, but we'll see how that goes. Yep, Pat.
I've been thinking about this lately, and we've got the Chamber of Commerce at one time, and I don't know if that's still true. The city had an economic development. So we've got ETEC, we've got PROAC, and probably some things like this mysterious enlisting over here to get things done. Having integrated, I mean, everybody wants things related to our mission. Do you talk to each other? Have we got everybody on the same wavelength, aiming the same target, or is it just sort of whatever everybody comes up with?
And I'll give you a strange answer to that question. In 1992, all those organizations sat down together and wrote a plan. 92. It was called East Tennessee 2000 Plan. And if you look, and I just uncovered it as I'm cleaning out my office, I found this plan. I didn't write the plan. I think Jeff Bostock wrote the plan, actually. The plan included everything we just talked about. How do you grow the lab? How do you grow Y12? How do you repurpose contaminated properties? how do you recruit and develop next generation workforce? All that's in that plan. And everything that all those different groups are doing today is still all within that plan. Yeah, we talk to each other. Now, Lawrence and I were personal friends, as were, Parker and the whole chain. There's a lot of changing players right now. I know I'm dropping out. Teresa Frady's taking over Croat. Teresa and Tracy are good buddies. We talk a lot more than people know. And the key is everybody pulling in the same direction. And it's an interesting time because politically on the national level, we've got so much churn. Congress is not what Congress was 20 years ago. When I started doing this, it's just a different world right now. So it takes a while.
Question, if there's any more.
Pat, you shut everybody up like you always do.
But that was a great, repeat the question again, because Ray asked me to make sure for the video. So what basically is everybody talking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
An answer is.
Jim, thank you for